In recent weeks, everyone's been asking the same question: when will Caitlyn Clark return? The WNBA's brightest star has been absent for far too long, and the speculations have run wild. From rumors about her quitting and moving to Europe, to whispers of her career being over, everyone's talking about her return, but not in the way they should be. But what if the truth about Caitlyn's recovery isn't just about healing from an injury? What if it's about the brutal, physical demands of the WNBA? Today, Sophie Cunningham, a fellow WNBA player, drops a bombshell revelation about Caitlyn Clark's situation that changes everything we thought we knew. And believe me, it's not what the media is telling you. It's much, much deeper than that. Let's break it down. Sophie Cunningham, the player who's closely involved with Caitlyn Clark, made a confession that should have rocked how we view the situation of the WNBA's star. While everyone else is concerned with return timelines, Sophie revealed something far more important, something nobody is talking about. She said, Caitlyn's situation is really day by day, and she doesn't even know when she'll be back. But here's the real shocker. Sophie followed up with a line that changes everything: she could be playing if it wasn't in the WNBA. Think about that for a second. What Sophie is telling us here isn't about the severity of Caitlyn's injury, but about the physical demands of the league itself. The WNBA level is so high and so demanding that even the biggest stars, like Caitlyn, have to be on top of their game every single day. And that changes everything. Caitlyn isn't sidelined just because of her injury. She's sidelined because, at the level of the WNBA, the physical and competitive demands are so high that even with recovery, she still has to prove she can compete at this level. The WNBA has never been as competitive as it is now. Sophie made it clear when she said, with the level of competition and depth of talent we have today, you can't just be good. You have to be on top of your game all the time. This isn't just a praise for the league, it's a veiled criticism of the WNBA's very structure. What Sophie is pointing out is that the physicality of the game and the pressure to maintain a high level of performance are so intense that even the brightest stars, like Caitlyn, aren't immune to struggles. It's no longer about skill, it's about endurance and the ability to survive a game of high impact. And this reality becomes even clearer when we look at Caitlyn's case. Even though she's one of the most talented players the WNBA has seen, she still has to face the impossible standards of the league. Competition is fierce, and injuries don't forgive. Here's the real problem. While the media and other channels are focused on Caitlyn Clark's return timeline, no one is talking about the total lack of official information. If you think you'll get any transparency about Caitlyn's situation, think again. Sophie revealed that, even with her close relationship with Caitlyn, she herself doesn't have any inside information about her recovery. She said, I'm not holding anything back. I just literally don't know. This, my friends, is a clear sign of an information blackout within the league. It almost feels abnormal, right? In any other major sports league, when the biggest star is sidelined for so long, there are daily updates about their condition, medical timelines, and return predictions. But in the WNBA, it's a mystery. This is a reflection of the system's failure to communicate what's really going on. And that's what makes Caitlyn's situation even more concerning. It's not just about her injury. It's about how the WNBA handles its biggest assets. Sophie Cunningham isn't just one of the most transparent players in the WNBA, but she's also one of the boldest in exposing the league's flaws, especially when it comes to officiating. In one of her most explosive statements, Sophie talked about the differential treatment certain players get from referees. She didn't hesitate to say, I love Paige to death, but those refs were giving her every freaking whistle. You literally couldn't touch her. For those who don't know, Paige is one of the standout players in the WNBA, and Sophie didn't hold back in pointing out that the referees seemed to be protecting her in a way that didn't apply to all players. This statement reveals an uncomfortable truth: a two-tier system in officiating. While some players are literally untouchable, others face much stricter officiating standards. And when Sophie calls this out, the price she pays is steep: fines. Heavy fines. What does this have to do with Caitlyn's recovery? Well, everything. The same lack of transparency and the inequality between players reflects how Caitlyn is treated, the way stars are protected, and the insane expectations that are placed on them. What makes Sophie Cunningham so unique in the WNBA isn't just her skill on the court, but her willingness to pay the price for speaking the truth. While most players learn to stay quiet after one fine, Sophie has stood her ground. And it's not cheap. In 2024 alone, Sophie was fined over $3,000 for speaking out about the league's flaws. She was fined $500 for a TikTok criticizing the refereeing, $1,500 for comments on her podcast about officiating inconsistencies, and more for talking about referee favoritism. And here's the point: with salaries in the WNBA ranging from $64,000 to $242,000 annually. Losing even 2% of your salary for one comment is no small deal. But Sophie doesn't care. She'd rather pay the fines than continue accepting the league's hypocrisy. What does that tell us? Sophie is willing to sacrifice her own paycheck to make sure the uncomfortable truths are heard. In an environment where silence is the norm, Sophie has become a voice of authenticity. And that makes her a much more reliable source than the fabricated stories you see elsewhere. The WNBA is at a crossroads. The league has achieved an unprecedented level of success, but as the demands grow, it's becoming clear that this success comes with a very high price, especially for the players who made it happen. Sophie Cunningham raised a crucial point about the paradox of the WNBA. The league has reached such a high level of competition that even its biggest stars have to struggle to keep up. What does this mean for Caitlyn Clark? It means that, even as one of the most dominant players in recent college basketball history, she still has to face an entirely new set of expectations. The WNBA has created a competitive environment that is so tough that even the best players need to prove they can stay on top. The competition is fierce, and injuries don't forgive. While Caitlyn Clark is battling to recover and return to the court, the league is also feeling the impact of her absence. And it's not a small impact. Caitlyn's lack of presence has resulted in a massive drop in the WNBA's viewership. The numbers are clear. Caitlyn's absence has led to a 55% decline in national viewership for the league. Fever Games specifically saw a drop from 1.81 million viewers to just 847,000. That's a huge reduction and a direct reflection of Caitlyn's importance to the league. She's not just a player, she's a draw. Her popularity helped the WNBA reach new heights, attracting more fans and attention to the league. And when she's not playing, the effect is felt throughout the entire league. Caitlyn's absence isn't just a sports issue, it's a visibility and financial issue for the WNBA. Caitlyn Clark's situation isn't just about her recovery. There are growing discussions online about the real cause of her injuries and whether the WNBA has failed to protect her adequately. Many fans and analysts are beginning to question whether Caitlyn's repeated injuries are due to a lack of proper protection from referees. Comments like, "This is going to just be her career if the league lets players foul the crap out of her every game," are circulating on social media. And this isn't a light accusation. It's becoming clear that the WNBA might be allowing its players, especially stars like Caitlyn, to become targets on the court with referees who aren't enforcing the rules consistently. The lack of protection for players, especially the most visible and popular ones like Caitlyn, not only puts their careers at risk but also their long-term health. And when Sophie Cunningham talks about this, she's not just exposing a flaw in the system, she's warning about a problem that affects the entire league. The big question here is the WNBA's model sustainable for its biggest stars? The league has achieved unprecedented success, but as the demands grow, it's becoming clear that this success has come at a very high price, especially for the players. Sophie Cunningham has been one of the few voices willing to speak out about the fact that the stars of the league, like Caitlyn Clark, need to meet impossible physical standards. This raises a fundamental question: is the current model of the WNBA going to remain viable for the players who have made it successful? Sophie has already suggested that if Caitlyn were playing anywhere else, she might have already recovered more quickly and easily. The ties to European leagues, which offer much higher pay and fewer physical demands, are starting to make more sense. This puts the WNBA in an uncomfortable position. They're losing their stars to leagues that offer not just more money but a less physically demanding environment. And they're going to need to reevaluate their business model if they want to keep their top players. The reality is that for many WNBA players, especially stars like Caitlyn Clark, European leagues are starting to look like a more attractive option. The salaries in European leagues are significantly higher than those in the WNBA, often 3 to 4 times larger, and there are no salary cap restrictions, meaning players can earn much more. In addition, many WNBA players earn more during the off-season in European leagues than they do in their primary league. So, with better pay and less physical pressure, why wouldn't players consider these leagues as a more viable option? If Caitlyn Clark were playing outside of the WNBA, it's likely she'd already be fully recovered, with more time to rest. And without the intensity of the WNBA's demands, this puts the WNBA in a tough spot. They're losing their stars to other leagues that offer not only more money but a physically less exhausting environment. And that's going to require a rethinking of the league's business model if they want to retain their top players. Sophie Cunningham isn't the only player in the WNBA to question the sustainability of the league for its big stars. A notable example is Maya Moore, one of the most influential players in WNBA history, who chose to step away from the league in 2019 to focus on social justice work. In 2022, Maya officially announced her retirement, but her exit didn't tarnish Her legacy, in fact, it enhanced it. What does Maya Moore's departure teach us about the WNBA? She showed that when the league and its business model don't align with the personal goals of the players, they have the option to step away and continue their careers in other contexts. For someone like Caitlyn Clark, with the weight of fame and success, that option isn't far off. If the WNBA continues with its extreme demands, it's possible that at some point, she'll need to make a similar decision to Maya. Seeking something more aligned with her needs, Sophie Cunningham isn't just facing a league with impossible standards, she's also fighting for something that should be basic: transparency. Sophie has been one of the few players willing to speak openly about the problems in the WNBA, even when it costs her dearly. She has accepted fines for her honest comments, but she doesn't back down, because for her, the truth matters more than money. In 2024, Sophie was fined over $3,000 for speaking out about the league's flaws. She was fined $500 for a TikTok criticizing the referees, $1,500 for comments on her podcast about officiating inconsistencies, and more for talking about referee favoritism. And here's the point: with salaries in the WNBA ranging from $64,000 to $242,000 annually, losing even 2% of your salary for one comment is no small deal. But Sophie doesn't care. She'd rather pay the fines than continue accepting the league's hypocrisy. What does that tell us? Sophie is willing to sacrifice her own paycheck to make sure the uncomfortable truths are heard. In an environment where silence is the norm, Sophie has become a voice of authenticity. And that makes her a much more reliable source than the fabricated stories you see elsewhere. What Sophie Cunningham is exposing with her fight for transparency goes much further than just referees and injuries. She's revealing a fundamental contradiction within the WNBA. The league wants stars like Caitlyn Clark, but at the same time, it creates an environment so physically demanding and relentless that these very stars struggle to keep up. The WNBA has worked tirelessly to become an elite league, but what's happened? They've reached a point where their biggest stars are struggling to adapt to these demands. Caitlyn Clark, who brought unprecedented popularity and attention to women's basketball, now has to prove, day by day, that she can stay among the best. She's not being challenged just by her injury, but by the intensity of the game that the WNBA requires. While the league continues to profit from the visibility that Caitlyn and other stars bring, it doesn't seem to know how to balance success with sustainability for these athletes. The big question is the WNBA creating a future for its biggest stars or simply pushing them to the limit until they can't give their best anymore? Now that we've exposed the truths about Caitlyn Clark's situation and the reality of the WNBA, the question is clear: what happens when the league's stars can no longer meet the demands? Sophie Cunningham, with her tireless honesty, has given us a real insight into what's happening behind the scenes, and the truth is undeniable. Caitlyn Clark could be playing if it wasn't for the unsustainable pressures of the WNBA, but what does this mean for the future of the league? The WNBA is at a crossroads. Its biggest assets, the stars like Caitlyn, are struggling to stay in a system that demands more than the human body can give. The transparency Sophie has brought to light should be the beginning of a serious conversation about the league's standards and how to ensure it remains sustainable for the players who made it what it is today. And while the media focuses on fabricated stories about European departures, the real story is right in front of us: a league that, despite its success, needs to urgently rethink its approach to ensure its stars don't get lost along the way. What do you think about all this? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more honest analysis and deep dives into what's really going on in the world of the WNBA.